And welcome to this meeting of the Education and Young People Scrutiny Committee. It's a very special meeting because we've got our two young people here with us today who will be agreed later, I hope, as the members of this committee. So I'd like to start by just going around so we can all introduce ourselves. And can I just remind you that we actually use first names on this committee. We're all equal, so we will all be using our first names. I'm Liz Brighouse.
Richard Doney.
Elsa Bloomer.
Leah Camorsey.
Ron Backstone, substituting for Andy Gray.
Izzy Creed.
Georgina Heritage.
Johnny Hoopsmith for Cholsey.
Toya Overton.
James Plum.
Lou Everett from Probation.
Harold Ouch, I'm Deputy Director for Safeguarding Improvement, Quality Assurance and Partnerships.
Morning everyone, Laurie Baker, the new Deputy Director for Education and Inclusion.
I'm Lisa Lyons, I'm the Director for Children's Services.
Good morning, I'm Sean, I'm the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People.
Thank you very much. This is a long agenda. It's very warm. Although better, we'll bring in the people who are online. We can't see them.
The screen in front of the chairman has just gone off, but if I invite Charlotte to go first.
Good morning all, Charlotte Donohoe, I'm Head of Specialist Safeguarding Operations in Thames Valley Police. Unfortunately, Mr Clark, who is our Chief Superintendent for Oxfordshire, couldn't be with us first thing.
And then Leanne.
Hi everyone, my name is Leanne Lewis. I'm a Deputy Designated Nurse for Safeguarding Children Looked After Children for Thames Valley ICB.
And Annette.
Hello everybody, I'm Annette Parrington. As you will know, I was the Interim Deputy Director of Education and Inclusion and handing over to Laurie. And I'm here today to support with the Best Start in Life plan.
And Peace.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Peace Nnaji, and I'm a co-opted member.
Debbie.
Hi, hi everyone. I'm Debbie Hartrick. I am Director of Safeguarding for Thames Valley ICB.
Annabelle.
Morning, everyone. I'm here in my role as Safeguarding in Education Chair.
Emma Markham.
Good morning. I would normally sit on the Scrutiny Committee, but I'm unable to attend today.
And then Dr. Bateson, I can see you're there, but you'll be introducing yourself later.
Can I ask someone to actually get these screens working, because I'm not going to be able to chair this meeting with people online if I can't see them.
I agree entirely, and I've already messaged IT because it's just gone off.
Right, okay. I will try and carry on with the agenda, but as I say, it's going to be impossible for me to chair the meeting if we can't actually see those in line. It certainly isn't inclusive.
So they're there for the committee, and I've got them on my screen, so I shall show them as a short-term diagram.
Yes, but I can't see hands going up and things like that. And okay, it's not.
I'm hoping they're right.
Good. Anyhow, thank you. So we've apologies for absence and temporary appointments. We've got Ron from subbing for Andy. Other than that,
Councillor Markham online, and apologies from Fraser Long.
Right. Okay. Declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest from members of the committee? No. Minutes of the last meeting, and I will call them out for both anything that people wants to raise on them and also for accuracy. So page 9. Can you watch so that we know whether anyone online wants to do anything on the good? I feel very insecure. Page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13, page 14, and page 15. Okay, and can I sign those as a correct record? Shall I just, no, I can't, I've already written all over this. Yeah, okay. Anyhow, we've got the meetings, the meeting then on the 12th of, no, that's what this is done. No, it isn't. We've got two meetings.
Yes.
Page 17. Page, there's just one, it's just one page. Okay. Right, so if we can move on to agenda item 4, which is the co-optee recruitment update. You'll remember that our two previous co-opted members of this committee resigned, and that we went through a process of encouraging young people to apply to become members of this committee, and we were very lucky through through that selection process, and thank you so much for that, because it was really good. We have got Eliza and we've got Leah at the committee today, and we do have to agree to the appointment of Lila and Elsa. So can I ask you if you agree to that appointment? Everyone in favour? Of course. Why wouldn't you be? Anyhow, there you are. Oh, you can put your name up now. So you know which is which. Thank you. The other person that we've got who'll be participating is Stefan. And Stefan has a long experience of education in Oxfordshire, having served in many schools as governor and as were you deputy at one time, if I remember rightly? And so it's really good to have you here, Stefan. As you know, you were here originally because we thought we were going to have another member of this committee from an unaligned group, and you serve as an independent. But we understand now that that may not be the case, that will happen at council on Tuesday. But I thought it was important that actually, because Stefan had been asked to serve, that he could come to this meeting. And I think at the pre-meeting, Stefan was really surprised, I think, at the breadth and depth of the issues that this committee were engaged in. So thank you for being here, Stefan. We then have petitions and public address. We've got one public address, I believe, and that relates to the Best Start, the Best Start in Life plan, which is agenda item 7. So I am going to ask you to speak before that item rather than speak now, because obviously you'll be wanting to hear what we've got to say about the Best Start in Life plan, but also so that you're actually speaking at the time whenever we're about to consider it. So Karen, thank you. I know you're online and we will hear from you later, okay? I still can't see you, but I can sort of see you on Richard's laptop. Is somebody there trying to fix this?
Yes, IT have come down to see if they can sort it swiftly, and have now gone upstairs, so I imagine they can't fix it swiftly, but they're on it.
Right, thank you. So that is the other thing is there was a letter, but that's been circulated, I believe, in relation to Sen. That was about a particular child and won't be put into the public domain. So but you've all, I just want to make sure you've all received that letter. Thank you very much. We then move on to the inspection, the JTAI inspection report of multi-agency response to child sexual abuse in the family environment in Oxfordshire. A very, very long title. And we've got a number of people here who are going to speak to this, I believe. I don't know whether you want to introduce it first. Yeah, thanks, Sean. Well, Sean, as the cabinet member, will introduce it first, and then I don't know whether any of the people here want to sort of make specific comments. I'm aware that this is a really important and a really in-depth report and brings together a whole number of agencies in terms of how we respond to this particular issue, and I welcome this inspection, because I do think all too often the pain of children in families who are being sexually abused or sexually coerced is actually not in the public domain. And yet it's probably there are many more of those children than actually most people realise, many more than are exploited or abused by strangers. So I think we really do need, this is a really important report, and I'm really pleased we have it before us today. Sean, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and to the scrutiny panel. So this discussion is a sober reminder of the work that the Safeguarding Partnership will do, the absolute need for it, and frankly the heaviness of some of the areas that Lisa and the team will need to be involved in. This is clearly an uncomfortable discussion, but a discussion that needs to be had. Children are being abused in environments where they should be being kept safe, and by the people that should be keeping them safe. And fortunately, we have safeguarding partnerships and teams that are here to seek that out and to keep children safe when they otherwise wouldn't be. It's been a difficult discussion, as I've said. The report is in depth. I should imagine lots of us, all of us, have read the report by now. It's not completely easy to extract what the outcome is, because there is no judgment, there is no grading. There's just really helpful analysis and findings that have been shared with us by the inspectors. And Lisa, I believe, has been tasked with preparing the response back, which I think is due in August. I think that would be a good opportunity to reflect by the time we've sent that response back as to where we're up to as a partnership. But otherwise, I welcome the inspection, I welcome the report, I welcome the discussion today, and I would just like to place on record my absolute sincere thanks to everybody that is working in the safeguarding space, because without you, we'd be in an awful lot of trouble. So thank you.
So I just want to place some context in this. So a joint targeted area inspection isn't a graded judgment, but it's the same as a Ofsted inspection, and it is led by Ofsted, but with equal inspectorates from HMIP, which is the inspectorate for the police, CQC, which is the regulator for health, and the ICB. Ofsted inspect children's social care and early help in this space, and also schools and education environments. And we've got colleagues here as well from probation, so HMIP, which is the Public Protection and Probation Service. And it's to look at how well the system is doing. So this was the second of a series of 6, which are set out by Ofsted to try and understand how well child sexual abuse is understood and recognised within the system. I think it goes without saying that it is much underreported and not recognised. The prevalence of it is much higher, and that is, of course, uncomfortable for people to think about. This is different from child sexual exploitation, which is the grooming and sexual exploitation in the community. We call that harm outside the home. This is the direct sexual abuse of children by a parent, a sibling, a relative in the household, or extended family. And therefore, you know, that for all the reasons that things can be closed behind doors, it becomes more difficult to identify. We also have, like I say, schools here, Dr. Annabelle Kay. There's a number of people who contributed to and were responsible for the seeing through this inspection and will respond to it. I convene and take control of the action plan in response for the system because of my role as a delegated safeguarding partner on the safeguarding partnership, and not because I'm the director for children's services. So this is not just a council matter, hence there are people who have an equal share in how this works. And there are many people here, but I guess, Chair, it's if people have got questions about it, then there's people you can ask from different agency perspectives. But other than that, notwithstanding that there's clearly things that we need to do, the longer term feedback that we were given, which is much more considerable than the letter that we had, was reasonably positive about the safeguarding response and protection and safety to children, and management of offenders, and responses from schools in identifying sexual abuse that's happening to children. The greater feedback was more positive than you might glean from a 2.5-page letter. So that's all I'd want to say.
Wish to at this point say anything, and any of the people involved in the report? Does anyone want to say anything, or are you happy to wait and be questioned by the committee? No. Right, can we move on for who would like to speak? Goodness. Yes, James.
So, sorry, that's a bit loud, isn't it? So no, one of the things that jumped out to me when kind of reading through the report was that one of the obvious gaps is around kind of data sharing between agencies, and also slightly on kind of actually how we collect data in the first place. And obviously there's challenges with this, but it would be helpful, I guess, to have a bit of an explainer on what we're thinking about doing to improve data sharing, so that we can actually, you know, identify children who are at risk earlier, and then sort of, you know, mitigate harm to them at an earlier stage.
Thank you. What the inspection showed us was that we had some really good data from each individual agency. So probation colleagues had very good information around perpetrators, and we had good information about victims and so on. There is further collaboration that we've undertaken since that time. We've employed a dedicated analyst within the Safeguarding Partnership whose role is specifically to ensure that we have the overview, all of us have a dashboard and overview of what's happening for our children within Oxfordshire. Progress has been made around this since February. It's obviously several months ago, and we're now able to see much clearer. More work to do. As you can imagine, all the systems are very different. So it's not a matter of straightforward feeding in from one system to another. So there has to be some manual alteration of that data so that we can see it, but it's definitely in progress.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, there's something, as Sean was mentioning, there's some helpful analysis and some findings in there. In terms of action in the very short term, is there anything that's happening in the next 6 months that is happening on the ground that you could highlight?
Thank you for the question. So from the probation end, we've certainly made some progress. Just for some context, at the time the inspectors came, we were 6 weeks into an exceptional delivery model, having had one of our members of staff stabbed in the office. So it wasn't a great time, and therefore it wasn't possibly representative of our best practice at the time the inspectors came. However, since then, our management team, which was at about 50% capacity, is now at full capacity, and we've recruited a dedicated partnership manager who is now embedded in all the meetings and is kind of finding her way through the partnership, and I think doing some really positive work. She herself has a history and background in MAPA, so she knows exactly what should happen in terms of public protection, information sharing and partnerships. So she's a really positive appointee from our perspective.
With a multi-agency approach, which is the right way to do it, can I ask, when a case is identified, who takes the ultimate responsibility for looking after the multi-agency approach?
So under working together, which is the legislation for investigating any sort of child protection or safeguarding, then the responsibility, well, it's everybody's responsibility in terms of there's an equal responsibility for the statutory partners, which is health, children's services in the council, Thames Valley Police, and schools, but the operational leading occurs jointly between Thames Valley Police and Children's Social Care. So they carry out the investigation with the support and information from the other partners, but the people that are charged with carrying out that investigation, the criminal investigation, the support for the child, sits with those two.
Could I just follow up on that? I think one of the points is that very often it's everybody's child but nobody's baby, and I just wondered, at the end of the day, someone is ultimately responsible and will be held responsible. Who is that one person?
So I assume if you think one person, so as the statutory DCS, that would be me.
Exactly.
But in terms of decision making for the child, in terms of management of a potential perpetrator in the criminal investigation, that would be with the police to decide how to conduct the criminal investigation, but we would do that in joint correspondence. Children's social care can continue to act independently, even if the police choose to do something different about a criminal investigation. So in terms of the child's welfare and protection, that continues to be with children's social care, whether or not a criminal burden of proof has been made out.
Okay, and that's very often not even up to the police, that would be up to CPS. Yeah, and I think it's all those different steps that has to be taken within what's a very, as you say, underreported, can't cope with this type behaviours within families and within communities. But at the end of the day, if something goes wrong, then the person who takes the ultimate responsibility is the DCS and the local authority. And we saw that very clearly with baby Peter. And I think I don't suppose there's a DCS in the country that doesn't remember what happened then. And certainly I remember very clearly what happened then, was very, 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 very angry about it. Unfortunately, still am. Anyone else want to contribute? Georgina.
Thank you. I was just looking for perhaps a little bit more detail on earlier identification of risk when there is no disclosure, just how that's achieved or addressed.
Yes, so by its very nature is quite tricky, because we're training staff, members of the community, various people to recognise signs and symptoms where there is no positive confirmation and sometimes no medical evidence. I think the point of this thematic JTI was to set back in the public consciousness. There's been a lot of focus on harm outside the home and exploitation of teenagers. And I think that there is a belief that within people's consciousness, the the realities of sexual abuse for children in their households or with their family members has been somewhat forgotten or overshadowed. And yet it's the most common, one of the most common forms of sexual abuse by far. The proportion of children who are exploited is very small in comparison to children who are sexually abused by a relative or someone they know. So it's not easy, but it's to be open-minded and to at least consider that sexual abuse of a child might be a feature for particular behaviours or presentations or health issues, and to keep that on your radar. Of course, it's very tricky to investigate that because this is not something that people would readily admit to or would feel happy about us exploring that with them. But it is about training, consciousness raising, support for families, having this being back more on the community platform. There's still a number of people who don't believe this actually happens. And of course, when you're talking with children, the prospect of criminal proceedings, we know is not. It's very hard to reach that burden of proof, particularly with young children and children who are pre-verbal. I don't know whether any colleagues want to say anything else.
Thank you. On a more practical level, you will have noted in the report that the training was well received across the partnership that was delivered previously. That's been rolled out again. We do have some tools to help identification. And so from Centre of Excellence, which essentially the government is now promoting as really good tools to assist people in their decision making and having those right conversations across the partnership. So again, we've reissued those to all of our staff. Since the JTI, we've had a number of conversations about the key findings, and once you raise the issue across the partnership, what we have seen is a small increase in the number of referrals that are coming into our front door as well, multi-agency safeguarding arrangements. So we've been very active. The plan doesn't need to be submitted until towards the end of August, but of course we haven't waited. We've been taking those actions in the meantime.
Could I just quickly follow up on that? How deep is that training going in terms of work with schools, for instance? This is endemic in our communities. And this is an issue that's been brushed under the carpet for far too long, and people find it difficult to deal with it. But actually, it has to be dealt with. And the best place is to start dealing with it well is through our schools. And so I just wonder if that training is going both into schools, into Sencos and what have you, but also in relation to the Governor Hub, putting it up so that governors actually, who do have a safeguarding responsibility, understand. I'm asking it for a very, very particular reason. I was a governor of a special school in this county for 13 years, and I saw some of the most horrendous issues around this particular subject, which weren't dealt with, and then led to well, but I do think now's the time when we've got this inspection, when people know that others are looking at this as an issue, that we actually do get it into communities. And the best place to get it into communities is through our governing bodies and through our councillors who are walking around, knocking on doors. When you're knocking on doors, have you ever thought when a child suddenly pokes its head around somewhere, what's happening to that child? Do you speak to that child whenever it suddenly appears behind the parent? I do think there's a range of issues that taking this report and using it positively in our communities and in what we do, and training people and helping them to understand and helping them to realise that something has to be dealt with, not swept under the carpet, because it doesn't stay under the carpet. So I do think that training and using that training in a much wider way would actually be really, really useful. And maybe that's one of the things we put in as a recommendation to the Cabinet, Sean. I want to raise some of that later in one of the reports, because I do think it's important that actually it does take a whole village to raise a child, and there's far more people in this county on governing bodies than there are working in our departments, and if we're going to galvanise that whole village, we need to make sure that village is able to respond. I have Debbie.
Didn't get asked the question you posed at the beginning. You asked how deep it was going.
Yes, well, I think that if it's not going deep enough, we'll ask as a result. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right. So, but I do want to bring in Debbie, because I believe you've got to go.
Yes.
Soon.
Thank you, Councillor. And I think we're all at one. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm just double checking.
Yes. Thank you.
Perfect. I think we're all saying the same thing, and we're all of the same mind. We're working really, really closely with our multi-agency colleagues, as we always do. And reading this report, I'm not sure. It's difficult to read the positives as well. We are really, really serious about child sexual abuse in the family environment. We've come an awful long way from the days of Victoria Columbier, when we didn't really see this or even define it. So we are getting there, but we always will have a lot to learn, and that's why we welcome all of these regulatory processes, because they do that deep dive into how to make things even better. I feel very confident across our multi-agency services that we absolutely recognise child sexual abuse as one of the most hidden, horrific forms of abuse, and we work very, very hard to keep children safe all the time. I think often, and it's already been noted by the inspectors, I read the report and I thought there were a lot of positives in the report compared to maybe they'd come around 15 years ago. So we are absolutely getting there, and I do agree with you that this is a community response. We are heavily reliant on our communities and our localities to help us with this work and to take anything seriously that children and families are saying to us. When you look at disclosure, it's almost easier when there's signs of physical abuse. As you can imagine, it's still horrific for the child, but a child will often not disclose sexual abuse until they've left that environment, until they become adults. So we want to try and get to that child before they become adults. And so often disclosure is via behaviour, so it's not what the behaviour is, it's why the behaviour is in the child. So I know a lot of training is very much centred on that, especially with our education colleagues and in school and in our hospitals and all of our health settings, which is really, really important. We really welcome the findings, which sounds horrible because you're talking about child sexual abuse, but we are in the business of continuous improvement. For health in particular, they did pick up the fact that GPs were not given information from the MASH during the inspection, and that was looked at straight away and improved immediately. And our other actions, so we're writing health only action plan, but also we're we do have actions in the multi-agency response, which will be submitted in August, but we're already working on those, as you can imagine. And a lot of it is about confidence, of like you already carefully outlined, confidence in our frontline professionals, how to escalate if people are, and how we as leaders support escalation, which is really important, and continue to do that. Information sharing is always a recommendation for all of these JTIs. I've been part of a lot of JTIs. This is not one of the worst, I'll tell you. And how we move information across, not just from the multi-agency processes, but also within health and across health, because we're all different organisations as well. And we've already started that. A lot will come out in training. So, for example, we can train all our GPs really quickly about the lessons learned. So we can do that over the autumn training table. But what we will also do is make sure that they learn the lessons immediately. So we're not waiting for that. And the voice of the child, I'm really interested in that. So it's not just literally the the voice, the words that a child actually says to us. That's that really difficult if a child is in that environment. It's about, like I said before, how they're behaving, how are we connecting, how are we connecting with all our other services to say is something new happening in this family environment that we need to be curious about, and we need to be asking those questions of our other professionals. So you know, we've taken it incredibly seriously, as you can imagine, and we're working with all our colleagues to put those improvements in place.
Thank you. I've got Charlotte. Charlotte?
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Lovely, thank you. From a policing perspective, I would just like to add that we were really pleased to have received some positive feedback on the well-coordinated, timely and quality of police investigations in the cases that were reviewed. But we also welcome the feedback about areas that we can improve. Our Chief Constable has a public protection background and a strong commitment to continuous improvement in our investigation quality. Following this inspection, we're working to improve how policing captures the lived experience of children, so reducing that reliance on a verbal disclosure where we can to help progress evidence-led prosecutions where that's appropriate to do so. We're also reviewing, and we recently this week just drew up some new proposals around how we effectively contribute to safety planning, particularly when that policing activity ends, and we have a joint responsibility to continue to safeguard children with our partners if there's no criminal justice outcome for a family. Yesterday, our Learning and Development Department agreed to prioritise 4 elements of future training that involves our specialist teams, but also for our frontline officers whose very early interactions with children and babies often form part of a later investigation into child sexual abuse. And just on the data piece that we've discussed already, we're working with Oxford to contribute towards the dashboard, and there's also a commitment from our service improvement unit internally to continue to provide relevant data to support the partnerships, prioritisation and understanding of risk that we're managing. So I hope that provides some assurance that we're absolutely working towards those areas.
Thank you. Anyone? Annette?
Hello. Just wanted to respond in terms of your questions around schools. So just to say, obviously, we've got Dr. Annabelle Kay, who chairs the education subgroup and sits on the executive as a statutory partner. So any of the people involved in the inspection will be looking at the lessons learned and flagging that up to all of the providers that we use. So I should just say this is not just about schools. We also extend that into our nurseries, early years settings, PVIs and childminders. And there will be an action plan that will be in place to train the DSLs. The sorts of aspects that we'll be looking at is where there may be wider indications, so not a reliance on children disclosing, but where there may be other aspects that you can pick up and be professionally curious around, so maybe behaviour, where they are missing school, the patterns of attendance. That will all be rolled out through the DSL training and through the education subgroup and then monitored by the partnership. But also in response, just in terms of the seriousness that we take this with, we have extended our what we call our ESAT team, our education safeguarding team. There are additional responsibilities now with the extension of childcare. So we have extended our ESAT team by 3. So we now have 5 advisors and a manager who work to and with the LADO to make sure that we are also, as I said, extending our reach and expanding, I should say, into childminders, PVI settings. That also covers other independent schools and into FE. So we are covering the breadth of any setting that may be responsible for education for a child in terms of their safeguarding responsibilities around this matter.
Anyone else with questions? James?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So we've spoken a bit about how we're kind of improving working with each other within the partnership, and obviously that's all really, really good to hear. But I was wondering about kind of, a level up from that, is there anything we're doing in terms of looking across the rest of the country at like other areas that have, you know, best practice in being slightly more innovative in how they tackle this? And, you know, what are we doing from that perspective in terms of, yeah, just trying to identify other places that are getting this right, and how can we learn from that?
Thank you. A really good question. Of course, we always look across nationally around good practice to make sure that we're picking up any indicators that are showing. We look through the lens of other local authority areas that are seen to be outstanding, to make sure that we're meeting those targets. But interestingly, since this has been published, we've also been contacted by other local authorities to help them to make sure that they're doing the right things and got the right foundations in place as well. So it works both ways.
Thanks. I've seen some good qualitative information in there, trying to get the word out, which seems to be all good work, and there's obviously some work cons as well. Coming from engineering and science background, I like data sometimes. Are there any sort of KPIs that result that are relevant to this? So for the time of the next inspection, I don't know, sharing has, the time frame's gone down, or repeat offending's gone down. So is there something that we can apply to say this is improved and this is a quantitative improvement? Question.
So in terms of operations, how we investigate child sexual abuse, that was found to be strong and well coordinated. So the process of responding to a criminal act or sexual abuse of the child, both by the partners, and then the follow-up in terms of emotional mental health support and protection, that piece of work was good. In terms of there isn't actually any KPIs. Nationally, this is underreported. It is a best guess as to what we think the prevalence is nationally, and it's still very low. So I always get this bit wrong, but somewhere in the region of 4 reported cases per 10,000. Yeah, looks like about average, and we were lower than that. So if we were going to put some measurements in, we would want to look at reporting, looking like other places like us, but that requires doing some sort of public awareness campaigning, because we respond when we are either told about it or somebody else within the community professional groups raises the concern, or a child discloses themselves. So when that happens, children are well protected, the investigations work well, the follow-up care is of a high quality. But it's the children that go unnoticed, if you like, that we need to raise that awareness. But it's tricky in terms of KPIs, because government have done these thematic reviews to try and get a sense of what is going on and draw some lessons from it. So, like I said, we were the second of what will be 6, and then they will do a national report on that, where there may be some KPIs or best practice published for partnerships. So, it sounds awful, but it would be a sign of success if we had more reporting, which is tricky, but I couldn't say how high, because we nationally, we just don't know.
I do think we need KPIs. We need to know. We need to have some mechanism for starting to understand what we don't know, because we know we don't know it. So actually, we do need to have some sort of KPIs. I do think it is around reporting, but I also think the other one might be around young people coming into the to the criminal justice system. And are they asked, or do we try and encourage them to speak up if they have been sexually abused. Because my experience of this, and I've had, I mean, is that actually very often young people who have been sexually abused very often have very, very low self-esteem. They and very often do go into meltdowns and end up behaving in ways that none of us would want them to behave. And when I see names coming up in the Oxford Mail around young people who've done things and who've been, and I know who they are, and I know their background, and I know everything about their background, and I know what their families were like, and I know what's happened to their families. I just think there's enough information out there that if we only were collecting it together, and I think it's to do with the point that Stefan made and that James made earlier about data sharing.
I think Charlotte from the police wants it.
Right. Can I just say that we do some work around, for instance, the Bishard inquiry that looked at that guy in those horrific murders and so on, that we started looking at actually trying to protect children further upstream in terms of offending. Now, these children that very often are coming in, and probation will be working with them, and I don't know whether probation has any data around that, but I do think that might be a way of starting to understand not just the impact of in-family sexual abuse on children, but also societal, the impact on societies around that abuse as the children grow up.
Just to come in on the point of probation data, we obviously work with 18 plus. It's our youth offending colleagues that work with young people. However, we do see a lot of reporting of people in the criminal justice system who themselves have been victims. And we probably do have data about that.
And do you keep that data? Is that data shared with others, that these young people have been subject in their childhood to sexual exploitation or abuse?
I don't know whether we keep that data because usually it's written in a kind of text format, but I can go away and check.
I mean, I really think that just that data itself from the probation service or from our own youth justice team actually might start to, because somewhere along the system we've got to unlock understanding some of the issues around this, because we can't carry on like this. This has been going on forever. You know, it's been going on forever. Kings did it. I just think we do need to start and try and find ways that we can collect the right sort of KPIs, the right sort of data that helps us start understanding both the prevalence but also the impact.
I think
Sorry,
Charlotte's trying to come in.
Charlotte.
Thank you for letting me come in there. As part of our change towards the Wellbeing Act and our creation of the multi-agency child protection teams that are due next year, we are trying to build within policing a mechanism for reviewing recidivism. So where we have had opportunities as a partnership to intervene with a young person earlier. So we're hoping as of next year we'll be able to track that much better. So when we do have a Section 47 inquiry around child sexual abuse, we'll be able to review whether or not we missed earlier signs. So that will be some pretty instant learning for us on a case-by-case basis. But will also help us to understand what those patterns might look like that we've previously missed when we look at that wider across the local cohort for Oxfordshire, but also force-wide. In policing, there's no limit to data. We collate huge amount of data. The challenge with that is interpreting it appropriately rather than just using a flat number. And Lisa sort of referenced this earlier, that sometimes an increase in reporting is not indicative that a service is worse. It might actually indicate that confidence in reporting is greater. We can use CJ outcomes as one KPI, but again, that's a flat number often and doesn't tell the whole picture. And when we're talking about child sexual abuse within the family environment, we're often talking about young people offending against siblings as well, where a CJ outcome may not be the right thing for the family or the right thing for children. So we need to be a little bit more sophisticated in how we track whether the outcome was appropriate for the child and the seriousness of the offence, and the wider family, and not just slightly lazily rely on that CJ outcome being a positive indication that we did the right thing at the right time for that young person. So I think what I'm saying is that KPIs are quite complex, certainly in policing, but definitely in the broader joint working arena, because low numbers doesn't always give us good confidence that everybody did the right thing. And relying purely on CJ outcomes as a sign that we did the right thing may not really explain the child-centred approach we've taken to those investigations. I hope that helps.
Thank you. We obviously have to try and put together recommendations to our own cabinet, but I would hope that with Sean, who I know is actually very concerned about this, that I'm sure he will take it to others as well, because it isn't just about one body collecting information. It's about the KPIs that come in from a range of bodies, and then, as you say, the sort of looking at those across a range of bodies to see actually what it starts telling you. And I absolutely agree with you. Actually, the more we can get reporting, the better it's going to be for those children. Izzy?
Thank you. I have two kind of related but separate questions. In the report, it talks about that in general, it's less good when there's less clear evidence of child sexual abuse, and then it discusses that something that in part is due to the volume of referrals into the MASH. So I was wondering what we were planning to do about that. And I also wondered that they identified a key risk of assessing risk when you've got adults that have got previous history of sexual abuse. And I wondered what action was being taken to address the concerns in both those areas.
Yeah, okay, so I'll take the one on the MASH, and then maybe colleagues can follow up. Yeah, look, we've got a single front door, and it's used well, and people will refer their concerns for a wide range of things, but not all of it will be child safeguarding. And we work with the police on what we call contacts. So the police will report every piece of information that comes to them. So the colleagues that sit in this building in the basement, which is where Oxfordshire County Council MASH is at this moment in time, and over at one of the police headquarters, we process somewhere in the region of approaching 50,000 referrals a year. So that's very high, but not all of that will be around this. So there is a sense in which we need to be really careful about the wood from the trees, because that's an awful lot of dedicated social work and police time thinking about things that are not necessarily child protection. And we are working with multi-agency child protection teams are coming in. We are reviewing and reforming how these processes work. But there is a piece around information management, making sure that we do have systems to get to the things as quickly as possible, but I'm not going to pretend that it's easy. And there is a view about over-reporting, but there's also an anxiety in the system and from the public that if you don't report, you might miss something. So we've just got to try and strike a balance. And we are doing a piece of work on that to make sure that we're not so overwhelmed by the volumes of alleged concerns that the things that are most important are missed. So that does mean working with partners who are working with children to upskill them so that they're much more have much more confidence in when to refer and when not to. I think I can see some hands come up, but the second part of your question, and Izzy, if you could just remind me.
Identifying adults that had previously had sexual abuse that were possibly a risk to children, because it raised a concern that it's not always consistent in the report.
Yeah, okay. So in terms of, sorry, just to rephrase your question, this is about adults who themselves have had the history of being harmed sexually, or adults who have a history of sexual offending?
I'm assuming it's the latter.
The
one,
latter, yeah, absolutely. So we work with significant numbers of people who've committed sexual harm, and it's absolutely our job, and we take it very seriously in terms of trying to identify where those adults might be in contact with children or where they might be posing a risk to children that they are in contact with, and that's where we do our very best to make referrals and understand what's going on in that home, who's coming into that home. However, as people have said here, it's a really complex issue because sometimes people don't tell the truth. We are not a 24/7 service that goes into people's homes all the time, so we are reliant on self-reports. We're reliant on partner organisations sharing information and us sharing information with them in a timely fashion to triangulate where there might be children who are at risk. And certainly we've put a lot of effort in previously, but also after this report, particularly to ensure that our information sharing improves week on week, time on time. We're now self-service on mass checks, so we can access Liquid Logic ourselves to try and make sure that we get the information about where these children might be, where the families, where these interconnectedness, because obviously some families are incredibly complicated. And we're now doing quality assurance on those checks as well to make sure that we're getting the right information to our practitioners for them to do their work. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on the MASH referral data part of that question. So on safeguarding in education, it's a standing agenda item, and Kat Johnson attends, and we look at referral data, but more importantly, perhaps referral themes, and then any actions that we might need to take. So whether it's any training, anything that needs to feed into the annual audit, or anything that we need to pick up through DSL forums. So that is something that we look at every time we meet.
Thank you. I suppose one of the things I'd be interested in is whenever teachers or people in schools have got a suspicion or think that something's going on and they actually raise it, but they don't have any evidence. Is that recorded?
It would be, yes. So it would, anything suspicious without evidence would all be recorded and then build a picture around what's going on with that child.
Right. So there'll be things called in from other bodies around that particular child. So there is somewhere the sort of data that Johnny and James were talking about that actually you can use to inform the issues around that one particular child.
Schools would hold that. We wouldn't be able to interrogate at that level, but schools would. It's normal practice to report suspicions and concerns, and then the DSL within school would have eyes on that and build up a picture, and then if any referrals needed to be made, that would be followed through.
Thank you.
Councillor Mark.
Emma?
Hi, thank you. I just had two quick questions. So do the Best Start family hubs have a role to play in identifying reporting? And also, are school children themselves receiving education on how to spot and report signs of abuse? Obviously, this would be appropriate for their age, but this could help victims come forward or other children raise concerns that could be investigated.
Happy to take that one if that's helpful. I'm sure you'll add to it. Oh.
Sorry, yes, come in. Sorry, I haven't got my microphone on. Annette, come in.
Yes, so absolutely the Best Start Family Hub. So any provision, any person who works with young people will be subject to having safeguarding training or know the routes where to raise concerns and how to identify those concerns. As you said, they are all linked in with the education subgroup, and that covers the whole of the range of education settings. And family hubs, obviously, we've got our social care and family practitioners in those spaces, and I know Sophie and Jenny can talk about that later. So yes, they're very crucial. Anywhere where you find children, there will be training and resources available, and reporting routes are clear where people raise concerns. In terms of young people themselves being
exposed to opportunities to think about their friends and themselves, then yes, some aspects of that is covered in PSHE curriculums, and that is very much though based on age appropriate. So PSHE curriculums will look at how children keep themselves safe and how therefore they can support their friends as well. But of course, that is quite a myriad of complexities around how that might then move forward to becoming a final report. But yes, they do receive some age appropriate.
Thank you, Annette. I've got Peace.
Yes. Liz has asked a little bit of what I wanted to ask, but I want to also, ask, is there a way to track and also obtain assurance that safeguarding duties, especially in our schools, especially regarding sexual abuse, is actually being carried out in the schools? Is there a way to monitor that it's carried out effectively?
So the answer is yes. So in terms of the inspections of schools, safeguarding remains a critical feature in terms of the inspection regime. We also, as Annette has mentioned, and I can see she's got her hand up, so she's got a bit more detail, but we also have an education safeguarding service, which both supports but also monitors the safeguarding quality in schools. And schools access training. There's somebody called a designated safeguarding lead in every school who's responsible for safeguarding issues in that particular school, and they are tapped into us, and we provide them some support as well. So yes, the answer is yes, and it's a highly regulated area. Annette, I don't know whether you'd like to just put in a few more sort of technical detail.
I think you've probably covered it. It is what's called a limiting judgment on Ofsted. So when inspectors go in, they look at safer recruitment. So making sure that safer recruitment processes for people who may be working with children and young people are used, and single central records. And obviously the LADO takes any referrals of concerns around allegations that may come. That is specific to people who may be working, but of course those people may also have children of their own, which is relevant to the point in discussion today. It is highly regulated. Every DSL receives training, and they are linked into the education subgroup. So going back to the report and the lessons learned from the report and anything that might help schools identify and remain professionally curious will be linked into ongoing training. And of course, whenever there is anything in the national press, that always brings up additional opportunities to refresh and reframe training as it's required. So yes, it's heavily required. Education safeguarding team undertake safeguarding audits of schools just to ensure that all the processes and opportunities of connecting internally within schools are maximised as well, because obviously schools are big institutions. So the DSLs are ultimately responsible, but they work very, very closely with their SENCO colleagues, their pastoral support leads, their attendance leads, to make sure that information is shared where relevant internally within schools as well.
Thank you, Annette. I've got Toya now, and then I'm going to wind it up, and we can look at what recommendations we want to make to Cabinet. Toya?
Yeah, it actually ties in Emma's question with KPIs a bit, and sort of what we've already mentioned as well of public awareness campaigns. And I'm sort of thinking that there must be some data of which campaigns we've done, whether in schools or for sort of the wider public, and also other counties and similar authorities will have done, that then show how that's affected the amount of sort of reports and successful prosecutions and so on. So whether that's something that's available for us to have, that's basically my question.
Thank you. There are some, a limited number of KPIs that nationally we compare, but as described earlier, it's usually quantitative, so it's normally number counting, and that gives you a limited view of how well we're doing. But we benchmark our data not only nationally, but with what's called statistical neighbours, which is determined centrally by DFE, those areas that they think are similar to us and how well we're doing compared to them. I just want to reassure colleagues here that we've been working on the data sets as described since this report came out. And perhaps the suggestion could be that when we come back in 6 months, we can show you the progress that's been made on that data set, so you can then be assured that the work we're describing is actually coming to fruition.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of more specifically asking, even comparing with ourselves, that when we run some kind of public awareness campaign or education in schools and stuff, we must see an uptick or no change or something in the reports, and we can compare that way as well.
I beg your pardon. So yes, we do look at trends and themes. So we know, and we've got data going back for the existence of our current system. So we're able to see how we know that there's dips and troughs throughout the year, and we're able to see it, whether that as a fairly blunt KPI, whether or not that's changing. And since the J-tide, then it has increased.
Good. Lorna?
Hi, it's Laura. I just wanted to, I'm just thinking one of the time to bring it in, that we've got, there was kind of talk around innovation, and there is some work that we're doing. We've got resource within the partnership of a participation engagement officer. So they're working really closely with young people in the communities and within our local arrangements to kind of really influence the way that we are training, so the voice of lived experience within our training to really show that impact and outcome. But also we're kind of putting proposals together for kind of a model of a young scrutineers. So we also want our young people to be scrutinising the work we do to influence and change, affect that change. So it's a piece of work that's been developed, but we're hoping that that would also triangulate some of the work that obviously data is important, but it's our qualitative also around our experience of our young people, and for those to be the drivers for change. So that's something we are doing locally, and we can of course report on that next time to show that evidence and impact.
I'll wind it up there. I think I'm winding it up at this point because obviously we are going to bring it back in 6 months' time, and we are going to look then at some of these issues and bring back what's happened in terms of that. Richard, have you have I'm sure been writing down the things that we've raised. I've also been writing down some of the issues that we would want to draw the attention of Cabinet to.
Yeah. So the importance of, I mean, these are headings rather than specific wordings, but the importance of safeguarding training being as wide as possible, continuing to strengthen data building and sharing, something around performance measures, and continue to prioritise early intervention and awareness and community awareness. Seem to be the themes of the recommendations being moved.
And the issue around multi-agency, I think I want to, and the fact that we can only do this with our partners, and also how we actually ensure that whenever it comes to our partners and us working together, we're able to be assured that we're not left holding the baby. And I think that's something that you need to be very aware of, because this is a major, I think the whole thing is a major issue, and in fact the very issue around saying that increased reporting, knowing, having knowing the children that are affected in itself is going to be seen as a weakness rather than a major strength for the authority. Anyhow, anything else? Elsa, do you want to add anything to it? Elsa.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know if this was already talked about, but I was wondering if there's like a specific age range that the JTI is focusing on, because children, I mean, a lot of children can enter employment as young as 12 or 13, and some children spend as much time at their work of employment as they would with a certain teacher. So I was wondering if employment is also an avenue for trying to get children to talk about their experiences, or whether it's just sort of focusing on schools.
Okay. I think the issue is, of course, is that if we get that that data and the issues very much deeper into our communities, then employers will be hopefully aware to as well. And Annette.
Just to say that children's employment is monitored by our attendance team. It's another aspect of what the attendance team do. They don't just monitor attendance in schools, they also look at employment licensing, because there are responsibilities for employers where they are employing children. So where that's the case, then we have contact with those employers through those employment licenses. Your question as to whether we specifically train those employers is not one I have the answer to now, but I take your points, and we will investigate that further as to whether that's a future opportunity as well. What we do though have is a lot of connections through to our businesses, through other partnerships groups, and we could consider how we might raise this issue to their awareness as well.
Thank you. You just triggered something, Annette. We also recruit chaperones, don't we? And through that, do we train chaperones to be aware of some of these issues?
Yes, we do.
Right, thank you. Lisa.
Just wanted to say in relation to the age range, so the Joint Targeted Area Inspection looks at from ages newborn to young people turning 18. So there's no specific age ranges, and it's not predominantly, it's any gender, sex, any age, and also the demographics are any class background as well. So it really is one of those sort of like all pervasive types of abuse. So yeah, that was the age range. Just to say that safeguarding around this is in all forms of organisation, particularly charities, clubs and sports, things like that. They have to have safeguarding policies and safeguarding training, which we support through the partnership. They have to have policies for reporting, so that wherever children and young people are, there's at least somebody that knows what to do in one of those circumstances. So I mean, we could talk about this forever, couldn't we? And there's an awful lot of stuff that we do to support this as a sort of system. But almost wherever children go, youth clubs, swimming clubs, voluntary organisations, there will be a safeguarding lead. It's not just schools, in colleges, and so on. And all of those people are tapped into the safeguarding partnership in one way or another.
That item on the agenda, and thank you very much. Thank you to those who have participated online, and thanks to all of you who have come and given your insights and answered our questions. I think this isn't going to go away. It's never gone away, and we need to be working together. And I look forward to getting a report in 6 months' time. So thank you very much, and we'll move on to Best Started Life. And we have got Karen, who is. Just give us a second while we change over people who are going to be involved in this. Right. So, Karen, I believe you want to petition us on this particular item. Thank you. You've got up to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Karen. I'm the Chief Exec of Oxford Parent Infant Project, and I'm speaking on behalf of voluntary sector partners. We really welcome the Council's commitment to increase Starting Life and Family Hub ambitions, and we're pleased to see this widely stated in the Council's Best Start for Life plan, their early years strategy and their Working Together paper. It's clear that the council can't achieve these ambitions on its own, and that the voluntary sector is an important partner in both the delivery and post-funding sustainability of Best Start in Life and Family Hubs plans. In order to turn good intentions into a reality, evidence consistently identifies some core partnership behaviours which are proven to improve outcomes for children. And these include building multi-agency relationships based on trust, shared decision-making, demonstrating mutual respect, being open and transparent, and taking collective responsibility. And we believe these are reasonable prerequisites for sustainable relationships between the council and the VCS. We therefore feel saddened to have to raise our concerns about some recent examples where the council's actions have not lived up to its commitment to partnership, or worse, have been directly contradictory to their own published strategies and plans, and these important principles of trust, respect and transparency. For example, a wide number of voluntary agencies across Oxfordshire have voiced concerns that the principles of shared decision-making and reciprocity have not been applied to the development of family hubs to date. Another example is the council's decision to decommission the infant parent perinatal service without any consultation, public or otherwise, which is contrary to the law governing such decisions. Also, without sufficient understanding of the widening gap this now creates for families with specialist mental health needs, without consideration for the inevitable additional pressure this now creates on voluntary sector organisations that are not well equipped to manage families with such complex needs, and without providing any response to an urgent letter of concern co-signed by 14 voluntary sector representatives sent 5 weeks ago. These actions do not speak to trust, mutual respect, transparency or collective responsibility. So our question is to the committee: what reassurances can this committee offer that it is scrutinising the actions of the council and holding decision makers to account to exhibit the necessary trust, respect and transparency that need to be present in order to deliver on their own written commitments to work in partnership with the VCS?
Karen. Sean, I think you want to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Karen, for taking the time to come and speak to Scrutiny. And you're very welcome to approach me at any time. I'm happy to set some time aside so we can talk about anything you'd like. But there's a couple of points to this. We're going to speak about the Family Hub agenda item next. So I'll cover off in more detail the thinking between the working together between the voluntary sector and the Family Hub proposal. It has been a very lively discussion in Cabinet, and the push has been consistent and strong that the expectation is that there's a working together between the voluntary sector and the Family Hub proposal, which brings its own challenges because we don't run voluntary run centres, but we're being told very explicitly by government what they expect to happen within the Family Hub operation that we're setting up from the ground up. However, we've taken this in the spirit that is being presented to us, and I'm quite pleased with where we find ourselves. And the Oxfordshire Family Alliance have been written to in the last couple of days by Lisa, outlining some steps that we can take between meeting together and talking together and try to understand how we can specifically land this. But on the infant perinatal service, just for absolute clarity for Scrutiny members, the Oxfordshire County Council does not fund this service, does not commission this service, doesn't own this service. It's an NHS, ICB and Oxford Health service. There are 3 services that have been pledged to be decommissioned by the ICB, which is the infant perinatal service, the child and adolescent harmful behaviour service, and family assessment and safeguarding service. All 3 have been identified by the ICB to be withdrawn. 5 Oxfordshire MPs have written to the Secretary of State for Health asking for this ICB decision to be called in, the ICB were notified that the MPs have written to the Secretary of State and they're currently reviewing this. The challenge with this being reviewed is this was a decision taken by the previous Bob ICB that is no longer in existence and is being reviewed by the Thames Valley ICB, but this discussion is being had at literally the highest levels in the country. But it's not a county council decision or discussion. So that's just a piece of clarity there, and I'm happy to speak about the Best Starting Life plan when you're ready to.
Thank you very much, Sean. And thank you, Karen, for coming. And I hope that clarifies the situation as far as this scrutiny committee is concerned. Thank you. So, yes, Sean, you're going to lead in this, yeah?
Yeah. So we've gone from a very, very heavy discussion and important discussion to what is, I believe, to be a very, very positive discussion, which is the Best Starting Life plan. I commend the government for bringing this to us and for the energy and enthusiasm and ambition that they're putting behind this. And I'm really excited in Oxfordshire what we're looking to do with this and how much further we're looking to go than otherwise would have been directed to. So the two best slides for me on the Best Starting Life plan are pages 18 and 19. On page 18, we're talking about a very specific, real outcome that will be changed for children because of this Best Starting Life plan, which is for 5-year-olds when they leave reception and enter year 1. There are early years goals, early learning goals, which basically mean if they've met these early learning goals, they will start year 1 ready to learn. The primary education will land as intended. And if they're not meeting good level of development, then it means that they're going to be behind their peers, which is clearly a concern. The Best Starting Life plan looks to have a layered and structured approach as to how we can have more children meet these early learning goals and be ready to learn when they start primary school. But within this, we have a huge inequality between children that are well off and children that are less well off. So the inequality currently is 30%. Now, I applaud the ambition behind this programme, but if we'd have just ran with the targets that had been set for us by the Department for Education, we would still be left with an inequality of nearly 30%, and that was a real struggle for me to accept and for us to effectively write a plan that I considered would be a failure if we'd have achieved it. So we had lots of discussions in Oxfordshire, at the County Council and in Children's Trust Board and the Health and Wellbeing Board about what the approach could be, and we decided to write our own targets, which will be very, very challenging because we still want to go with the government's ambition of raising good level of development for all of our 5-year-olds, for all of our children across the county. But at the same time, those children eligible for free school meals, we need to go further and faster and harder at the same time as improving outcomes for everybody. So it's a real challenge, but what we've done is we've set a target now for Oxfordshire that if and when we achieve our target, we will close the inequality between the well-off children and least well-off children from 30% to 20%. We still won't be happy with the 20% inequality, but we'll be a damn sight happier than where we are at the moment. And on page 19, it talks about the very specific actions that will be taken to help us get to this point. From a governance perspective, the Children's Trust Board that I chair will be looking to bring all of the partners that will be working on the Best Starting Life plan, and I'm hoping that it can be a safe space that we can use to unblock any of the things that are holding us up in order for this plan to be as successful as possible. So I'm excited by the ambition, I'm excited by what we're looking to do, the very real difference that we're going to have for so many children across the county, the very real difference we're going to have for children that come from deprived backgrounds, and this is going to be a credit to all of Oxfordshire and all of us when we make it happen. So really excited.
Who wants to start off questioning around this? Or Lisa, did you want to come in? Right. Oh, we have some new people at the table. Can you introduce yourselves, please?
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm the Assistant Director for Early Help Assessment and Prevention, and I've brought colleague service with me for any questions.
So I'm Jenny Stoker. I'm the Operational Lead for Family Hubs.
Hello, I'm Harriet Preedy. I am the Manager for the Targeted Youth Support Service, and I've been working on the local youth transformation pilot.
Thank you. I'm really pleased that the Targeted Youth Service is involved in this. Thank you. Any questions? If people want to open with questions, Stefan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's quite surprising that the government have an ambition of 75% achieving. What about the other 25% question mark? So well done for actually upping the percentage. Can I ask, sort of, this is a great document and there are great ambitions in it. What are the practical steps to actually achieving the goals?
So on page 19, it gives you.
Sorry, we've got a problem with your numbering, I think, because our numbering is page 19.
Of the best start.
Either wrong. This is the best start in life plan.
Yeah, that's correct. And then I think you had a page. That one there.
So for us, that's page 61.
Sorry, Stefan. So with the right page number, we've got 18 very specific actions that we'll be looking to get delivered at a pace. And I'm sure colleagues might want to join in, add some more detail.
I'm happy to, if that's helpful.
Oh, Annette, hang on a minute.
Yep.
So no, if I just come in, there's
sorry, I didn't have my microphone.
Okay.
Carry on, Annette.
All
right.
No.
You're going first, Lisa, and then.
Okay, so I'll just give you a concrete example. So within the Best Start in Life, children living in poverty or in receipt of benefits are entitled to free school meals and therefore pupil premium. A real practical piece of work that we've done that has been quite difficult to achieve in the past is something called auto-enrolment. So that's about identifying children that might be eligible and in need of free school meals without parents necessarily having to go through the difficulty of putting their hand up to say, we're one of those families. So we've managed to complete a process of auto-enrolment, which means that in the nicest possible way, we can identify children who will be entitled to free school meals. And at this point, they can work with schools so that children can also get their sort of hot dinner at school, but also that brings, we think, about an extra £1.6 million into the school system to support children with additional needs. So that's a very practical thing because we know the relationship between poverty, nutrition, and being able to concentrate and engage at school. So that's a really positive thing in terms of the foundation year and the rising 4 or 5. That's a practical measure, and there's a number of those that are going on, and Annette obviously is the lead at this point for the Best Start in Life, so I'm going to hand over to her, but I just thought that was something really useful, and I was going to say simple, but it wasn't, but we have done it, so fingers crossed it works.
Thank you. Just to give you some more practical examples, obviously today you've got 2 parts of the Best Start in Life. And you will see you have the actual plan that we're talking about now, but one of the implementations, key deliverables on the plan is actually the family hub. So Sophie, Jenny and Harriet are here today if they've got any specific questions you may have in relation to family hubs. Best Start in Life is really a very strong focus on those first 1001 days, but also in terms of prenatal and perinatal support. So it's around giving the tools to families and parents to be able to support their children. So I know that Jenny will be able to speak about some of the home learning environment resources which are available to parents. So it's about supporting parents of very young children having access to resources and support where they need it in a locality space. And where those locality spaces are maybe not as local as they need them, how we're going to be working with those families further out. It's a universal offer for all families, and we are layering over and into the Best Start in Life. So something very practical, for example, we will be having Best Start inclusion practitioners linked into every one of the family hubs. So those inclusion practitioners will work with other family hub teams in a multidisciplinary way, working through health visiting visits, so sharing the data from the additional health visiting we do, where we may have children who won't meet their good level of development, and working together. For an example, those Best Start inclusion practitioners, who are known as BSIPs because we do love our acronyms, they will identify where there may be children with additional needs or who aren't meeting their milestones very, very early on, and able then to be able to access support for those parents, and being able to unlock additional support if that's what's needed. It's really a partnership piece. It is really all about working together and supporting families without judgment, without stigma, to be able to support their children. And a significant part of that is we'll be looking at where those families are living, who they are supported by currently, and using some of the voluntary sector where they may already have connections, either through their faith communities and churches or through other activities, to bring everybody together to be focused on the same outcome, which is to ensure that children are ready for school, achieve their good level of development, and then move on ready for their learning into more formal schooling. Government has also given a lot of resources around supporting some of the early years education. So we are looking specifically at working across our reception teachers to make sure that there is clear understanding around the expectations and the sorts of activities that you can do with children to be able to move them into their full level, good level of development. Just to give you an example, there are actually 13 indices that are measured as part of good level of development, and children need to be able to meet all of those two expected levels to achieve that. There are many other practical examples, I think, that will come through as the hubs are established, and case studies that will give you examples of some of the practical additional things that we'll be doing as well. There's quite a lot at the moment, so I'm not sure if I can expand any more, or whether that helps answer your question, at least in part. Colleagues might want to add more.
Thank you. Stefan, did you want to come back?
No, it's fine for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Annette. I mean, I suppose what I would be asking officers, if they've gone through the massive amount of research that was done in relation to the Sure Start centres and the Sure Start funding, because of course we don't, this is us doing it again in a sense. This is us actually picking up on a lot of work that was done in those centres that actually raised attainment in a way that has never been raised before. And there's massive, you know, this sort of size in terms of the amount of research that's being done, right up to GCSE level for children that have been through Sure Start centres. So I just think it's not as if we've got to relearn. We know what works for early years, and we just need to make sure it's put back in place for our children now. But I've got lots of research, Sean. I've got lots of books you can read about it, right?
Thank you.
So I do think the fact that I sort of struggled a bit when I saw that you decided to put your aim higher. I always think that having a high aim is not necessarily the best way to get there. You actually have to work at making sure that everything's in place, because otherwise, you know, you don't want to end up saying, really sorry, didn't get that. It's sort of a bit below, but we did actually push it. So I'm not sure that I'm always wary of saying, well, we can do better. but we need to make sure that how we do that we have got in place the things that make us do better. And I think I'm not completely at ease with whether or not we have that. I do think we can do better, but I'm not sure whether that things are all in place necessarily to do that. I do think possibly that one of the biggest impediments in relation to children growing up is them feeling safe. And very often we've got far too many children in this county living in temporary accommodation and essentially homeless. And that impacts enormously on their education. The fact that we're moving to unitary councils actually means that we can hold housing. We will be the housing authority as well as doing childcare, and I think that can only lead to better outcomes for children. But when I see children who have moved several times, not just those children, but also our own children, I'm talking about children we care for. And I feel a bit about how much of the children we care did in this Best Start plan, because obviously there's other issues around fostering, around children being taken into care and what have you, that we need to, our children on the edge of care. But I don't feel so much that we have got enough in this Best Start in relation to the children we care for. Yes, Sean.
Thank you. So just on the targeting, it's a fair challenge. So on the overly ambitious element, so for the regular good level of development target for all of the children across the county, we're not being wild here. You know, the government have set us 77.8%, and we've increased it by 2%. So that's fine. It's the bit that where the children are eligible for free school meals, they're currently performing at 43%, and everybody else is performing at 70%. And that bit is just is too low. It really is unacceptably low. And that's the bit that if we'd have just ran with the targets that we were being given, we'd have increased it to only 50.8%. And that's the bit that I really struggled with. So that's the bit that we're trying to be very ambitious on, and we're going for 59.8%, because I just think that they should have additional and extra support from us.
I'm sure that we've put in place the resources to do it, and quite honestly, just the pupil premium will not be enough. And so I think this committee will want to understand how you're getting there, and what you're actually doing beyond something like the pupil premium, which for many settings they've almost done anyway, because we have always been aware, particularly as governors in schools where children have got challenges, and where parents, it is a big thing to say, hey, I want to tell you that I'm on benefit and I need to have free school meals. It is an enormous thing for parents to have to do. Parents want to be able to feed their children, and so I do think there are issues around the pupil premium. I absolutely think it's brilliant that you're going to do this, and I hope that actually it will work. But we need more, so we'll be there looking for more, Sean. Stefan.
Sorry, just another supplement. You've got a fair chance dealing with the school age, because you've got the data, you've got what Lisa was saying about the free school meals index, getting people enrolled onto it. Therefore, you've got a target audience. What about the audience pre-5, pre-4.5 years of age? Are there systems in place to look at the families of the people on free school meals in the primary schools to say, well, actually there might be younger siblings at the age of 1 or 2 that need our support and help, so that you actually do the real early start. And I actually agree with you that the Sure Start centres that hit the brick wall, and we won't go into the politics of that, but were brilliant, and they were making real differences. We've got to really try and recreate that for the early years in primary schools, but also the pre-primary school years. So my final comment, Liz, you're absolutely right. It is the duty of this committee to actually make sure that the foundations are in place to achieve this. So my question is, what about the preschool years? Thank you.
I'm sure Annette will come in at this point, but this won't work if we go in at the age of 4 or 4.5, or you have to start at the very earlier stages, and there is this entire plan is being written to cover that entire period to make sure that we're likely to be as successful as possible. But I imagine Annette will probably want to come in.
Well, thank you very much. It's a really good question. So childcare sufficiency now runs from 9 months old. So we have additional statutory duties to be able to provide sufficient childcare for working parents from 9 months old. What that actually does is gives us a wider range of data that we can work with and from. And so we look at where we need to put that sufficiency in place to be able to meet the needs of working families. And I know your follow-up question, well, that will be around what about those families who aren't working? There is also 2-year-old children who do not have working parents, where we identify those young people and work with parents to specifically get them into childcare, where they then have access to a high quality early years education. So we have a sufficiency team. That sufficiency team has what we call entitlement officers. It might be a name that we choose to potentially change for the reasons that you just spoke about, Liz. But those families are identified through the connectivity from the midwives to the health visitors through the family hubs. I know Jenny will want to talk about how those young people and babies are identified. So we can pick up children much earlier than we used to. And we can work to identify those. Where we have knowledge of children through schools, obviously, we are also able then to work with those parents to ensure that those young people are picked up at a much earlier and earlier stage if they need access to early years education. Where parents don't want their children to go into early years education, that's where the family hubs really offer some support through parenting programs and through resources that they can use at home for home learning. And of course, we've got a wide range of teachers who work within the early years space, both with settings and also will be, as I talked about, within the family hubs. The SEND reforms are actually quite crucial in this space as well, because experts at hand, which is additional speech and language therapists, occupational therapists, access to educational psychologists, that runs from run and through and is going to be connected into the family hubs. So there are going to be a wide range of people who are there to support families when they need it, and we will be able to identify children much earlier. We absolutely know that 4 years old is too late to be able to start to be able to support children meet their good level of development. So we are starting as early as we possibly can. So I hope that answers a little in part in terms of the 3-5s.
Thank you, Annette. You've caught it brilliantly. I know someone who used to say that it was from embryo that was what Sure Start was about. If you didn't get the pregnancy right, you didn't actually get the rest of it right. Yes. So yeah, I think it's really important. Right, I've got Johnny, Izzy and James. And Ron.
Thank you. Lovely. There's 18 actions here, which are nice in terms of the volume of them, and it's ambitious targets, which is always great. But if you had to pick which ones you think are going to be the most effective out of those, to prioritize which one's going to have the most amount of resources behind them, or the one that I think is going to be most effective, but to have your subjective views as to perhaps which ones you think are going to be most effective.
Lisa.
Sorry.
We know that many children do not meet their good level of development through speech, language and communication issues, and that isn't always related to inherent disabilities or SEND needs. So speech, language and communication is the foundation, really, blocks towards all sorts of other learning, engaging at school, being able to work in groups and so on. So there's a massive focus on that. There's also a massive focus on managing behaviour or routines,
parenting, managing stress, nutrition and basic development, so things like dental, eh, children's nutrition, sleep routines, all of those things are important. So it's difficult to say which are going to be the biggest priorities, but we see that an over or an increasing or over-representation of children with speech, language and communication issues later on, which impact their learning and mean that they're not school ready. But there's also quite a lot of evidence about being physically capable for school with, you know, sort of basic self-care needs that are appropriate to 4 or 5 year old, you know, being able to be toilet trained where you should be able to take turns to some degree. You know, there's a whole range of things, and be able to play. So what we call school ready, basically, and those things need to be sort of in a supported environment. So within the paper, there are some small things we can do. So we will go when we get to some of the family hub stuff, but we talked about the voluntary and community sector, and you know, our plans to really try and support grassroots in terms of you know, extra stay and play, extra sort of staff training, linking out with people. Adult and community learning is very important so that parents can grow in confidence to support their children. So it really is whole scale. And I guess within the family hubs, we say it's like, it's never going to be too late to get development right. I know good level of development gets measured in the early stage of primary school, end of reception. But part of what we're trying to do as well in the family hubs is to make use of the same spaces, and with the voluntary and community sector and through the work we've done on youth partnerships, is to turn them into centres for youth networks in the evening with the voluntary and community sector, so that we re-engaging young people. So we're talking about the little ones, and that's really important. But we're also trying to look at how we get people ready, because they're going to be residents and parents of the future. So.
Thank you, Lisa. Can I just say, I think we have strayed a bit into the families, the hubs. So possibly we'll just take both together. So if I mean, I thought maybe I'd keep them separate because one was walked and the other was high, but maybe maybe we could take it both together. Izzy.
Kind of two separate related questions. Obviously, it's really good that you're talking about the auto enrolment to free school meals, but are we actually monitoring the uptake? Because obviously there's a thing of parents having to apply, but then there's also concerns about stigma of uptaking that offer. So are we looking at that? And I also wanted to know a little bit more about how we're going to actually increase the 15 hours childcare entitlement, because it's okay saying we want to increase the uptake, but how are we actually going to do that?
Lisa, Annette?
So I'll bring Annette in on the childcare uptake. The answer to the free school meals piece is yes, of course. So we will, for everybody that we identify through auto enrolment, we'll work with the schools in order to make sure that those people, we can't force people, but it's a sort of better way of encouraging people to take what they're entitled to for their children. So the answer to that is yes, there is a mechanism to work out if the people that we identified did actually go on to claim free school meals. And then the piece around entitlement on childcare and uptake, we're trying very hard with a campaign to make sure that it was always pitched as being about using this so you could go to employment, but trying to say, look, you know, education and development, access to nursery or play or whatever is a thing in its own right. So Annette will know a little bit more about the opportunity for expansion of that.
Yep, absolutely. And also just, I think, to respond, I think family hubs is actually our key focus at the moment. That and the creation of the partnerships with the SEND reform opportunities which are coming through experts at hand. We are reorganising those locality-based partnerships across. So I think the strength of working together is one of the key aspects, and the family hubs provides us with a very strong approach that we can use. So we're all working very hard to make sure the family hubs are up and running and have a full offer. And Jenny and Sophie are here, and I'm pleased you talked about sort of the looking at the two of them together. So yes, we do monitor the uptake of those free school meals, and we do work through our schools because they have the relationships with parents who work very sensitively with parents about taking the opportunity of accessing that. The number of families who don't actually is very small if they know that they're available. And of course, you know, when children are in school, they are not in two lines or something when they are collecting their dinners. It is the same. It is the same. So the stigma is something that we consider, and we work sensitively with families. There's a significant amount of work that's undertaken by the childcare officers in that locality space, always looking at where we need to have additional sufficiency for childcare. Schools have been able to apply for school-based nurseries to expand, and we're working with a number of schools currently. That's come across in 3 phases. That increases the number of available places because, of course, families, you know, will look at their childcare arrangements and therefore access to early years education, mostly usually close to where they live, but some actually may want it closer to their work. And so we look at and produce a childcare sufficiency plan on an annual basis, where we identify that we need additional sufficiency based on birth data, because we do have that data that comes to us in terms of live births within Oxford. We can then work with the providers and the opportunities either for expansions or to bring new providers in. It is the case, unfortunately, over time that early years sector has been subject to challenges around the level of funding that early years providers receive. I'm pleased to say that's been increased significantly, and it is encouraging people to come back into that very important market. They also work with their FE colleges in terms of the qualifications for people to be able to work within that sector. And so there's a number of things that we do to encourage and ensure that we've got, 1, the right sufficiency, and 2, in the right place. Where we identify families specifically, for example, who have identified that they can't find information that they want, maybe through the Family Information Service. Part of Family Hubs is a new digital platform. Those family information officers will work directly with families to find them an alternative that is acceptable to the family. So we work very closely individually with families and also in locality level, but also at strategic level, to ensure that we are meeting both their statutory duties but also the needs and wants of parents within those localities as well.
Thank you. I now have James.
So I guess my question is more around what we look at on the Best Start to Life plan sort of next year. So do you guys have like an idea of the target you'd like to hit in 2027 so that you are aware of, you know, we're on track for 2028? Have you guys thought about that? And if so, you know, would you be willing to sort of look at it again and find out what's working and maybe adjust accordingly if needs be? Does that sort of make sense?
Simply.
Okay, Nat.
If Lisa wants to come in,
You can do it, she says. Come on.
The answer is yes. We are setting and looking at those targets at the moment. And we will absolutely be looking at the delivery against the 18 actions that we've got, and varying those targets depending on opening dates and various other things for family hubs. We are always open to learning. So the Best Start in Life steering group will be starting to look at those targets, monitoring progress against those targets, taking any learning, not only from ourselves and what we know works well in Oxfordshire, but also in reference to, for example, what you talked about, Liz, in terms of other national best practice. So we've already had some meetings in connection into Blackpool. They had additional funding, but actually some of the work that they did is something that we can replicate across into Oxfordshire, and we are also maximising the connectivity with the SEND reform plan, which also looks at aspects of how schools and early years settings are organised. So we are looking at how we can overlay some of the opportunities that the SEND reform plan brings to us to maximise opportunities within those early years settings and at post 16 as well. So I know that Harriet's here, so specifically thinking about some of the youth work offer, about how we link the new cluster models for schools into those youth partnerships in districts. So we're going very much into that district and then locality based ways of working. It's really crucial when you're building relationships and partnerships. So that's going to be a strong focus. But yes, we'll do a number of learning opportunities and reviews as we're moving across. And we'll be starting to monitor some of that data monthly as we're moving forward.
Thank you. And now I've got Ron.
I'm wondering how you handle families in rural areas, because there they can be relatively isolated, difficult to get to family hubs, for example. And I would have thought that they had particular problems, which may not be addressed by lots of the things that we're looking at today.
So I will defer to Sophie and colleagues about how they're planning this, but I just want to say that we're coming at this from family hubs not being a sort of static building that people come to. So we are looking at a hub and spoke model and making use of resources that are throughout. Although we're looking at initially the 5 centres, we are also looking at sort of presence in libraries, pop-ups. We need to place family hub work where children are, which is often in schools and that sort of thing. So that's what we planned in terms of hub and spoke and reaching a network out across rural areas so that we're going to them, all the places that they go to. But Sophie can answer more about what we're planning on doing.
Sophie?
Yeah, I think the beauty of the hub and spoke model, so the model whereby we have primary Best Start family hubs in each of the 5 localities and a network of sites around it, means that we have more coverage in terms of meeting the needs of children and families. So we know through our extensive research and analysis around the data where Best Start family hubs are going to have the greatest impact. And so the satellite services around those primary hubs will be in a variety of venues. So it could be a health setting, it could be a community-run children's centre, it could be a faith setting, for example. It needs to be in the communities in which we serve. But we also know, despite that, there still will be families that will find it difficult to walk over the threshold of a building, and there will be barriers for some families in terms of accessing support and services. So as part of our model, there will be an outreach aspect as well, so that we will be able to reach communities and children and families that aren't in any of those localities. There'll also be a digital offer as well for children and families. So we're really clear that there will be interventions and support and signposting available digitally for families in terms of, coverage of Oxfordshire. But I think the key component to getting this right is how we work with our voluntary community, faith and social enterprise sector, because we know that those organisations are in communities, have rich knowledge and understanding about children's needs, and are delivering services that are supportive and fit with the government guidelines in terms of the core offer and the wider offer. So it's how we work and support those VCFSE organisations to help deliver a partnership model across the piece.
Thank you very much. Did you want to come back?
Yes, that sounds very good. I think one of my concerns is when you're looking at the requirement for the local support, that we do have families who live in relatively wealthy areas, so are really isolated and have a the opportunity to drop through the net, as it were. And I wonder if there's anything we can do about that, apart from the digital option, which I think is useful.
One of the things I would just say is that some of the beauty of Sure Start and then what followed on afterwards was that there was a universal access, a universal offer. And in the papers that you've got, it will talk about, you know, anybody from whatever background can go in and use some of those facilities. And it was the universalism that what really helped. It sort of lifted the entire population, and then there was no stigma about having to go to the centre or whatever. So. And then behind that, because we'll be working with midwives, health visitors, schools, you know, we're quite good actually at identifying people who might need a little bit more help. And once you're through the door for something like, you know, whatever that might be, a play group or coffee morning and things like that, that we that there's something called getting more help. So I'm reasonably confident if we pitch it in that way, regardless of where you come from, because what's good for, you know, a child with additional needs is good for everybody. So it lifts up, you know, the work. And if it's in places like libraries, on school sites when mums are bringing up older kids, etc., you know, then or dads, then you know, people in the community, health visitors and so on, do know who might need a little bit more support. But Sophie can.
I was going to add that there's a core offer and a wider offer for families. So the core offer is defined by some of the parenting programmes, the home learning environments, stay and play environments, healthy babies, and support for children with additional needs. But it goes much further than that. The Go Further wider offer speaks to the universality element in terms of making sure that we are, we call it sort of soft hand holding, to make sure that families get the access to the support that they need. So that can be around a much broader range of issues. It might be financial issues or health issues or further wellbeing issues. So it's really clear in terms of the core offer being delivered to young children, because the focus of intervention is on the 0 to 5s, but actually it's quite a holistic offer in terms of the ages of children, it being accessible to all, including all the way through to our youth partnership offer as well. And I don't know if it's helpful to kind of speak to how we are kind of meeting the needs of all age children within this Family Hubs model.
Thank you. Georgina?
Well, actually, I think Ron's stolen my thunder. So you've answered the question very well. I was going to ask a very similar question in terms of kind of reaching rural areas and how it works from the best start localities, if you like. So I'll just phrase it slightly differently, I suppose, because you have answered the bulk of my question very well. It was just about the locations. I do appreciate from your responses that it's not just about the strategically placed hubs, but it is interesting for me in South Oxfordshire that Didcot, which for those of us who live in South Oxfordshire is barely in South Oxfordshire. It's not somewhere that people travel to unless they're in Didcot. It's you know, it's quite remote from the majority of the district, and I would imagine for those who live in Sherwell, Banbury is kind of the furthest points, you know. So I am curious about how these locations were identified. I don't doubt that there wasn't a huge amount of work put into that. But I'm just interested to know, was it the population counts, or I'm just interested to know how those locations were selected.
A range of data. So some is our own in terms of prevalence of need. So we do something called Child in Need Census every year, and we've also got tons of data. We talked about referrals and contacts and types of issues that, so we can do some population data, public health as well in terms of the JSNA, and we also drew on the Institute of Public Health, Institute of Health Equity under the Marmot pieces of work. So for instance, we also looked at where there may be high levels of need, but also relatively high levels of service and accessibility. So interestingly, one of the the areas that was showing as having most demand was Wantage. And that may or may not be a surprise to people, I don't know, but you know, it was. And so since this is the start of a programme which may continue to develop depending on the government agenda, we've gone as far as we can. And then the hub and spoke and networks that spill out from that are, we can continue to develop those networks with partners. So is there anything else you wanted to say, Sophie, about the data or how we managed to get to the locations that we did?
Just to add that that data was in conjunction with Oxford University as well, and it looked at 4 years of children's social care data, so information about children coming through our multi-agency safeguarding hub in terms of areas of needs.
Thank you. I didn't doubt that there wasn't that there was research behind it, but thank you for kind of giving a little bit more detail on that. And I suppose really for it's going to be that spoke element, you know, that's going to be really vital, isn't it, in taking this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I just, Johnny, have you got a new question to answer and a new topic? Okay, well, can you do it? Because I think we're running out of time, and there's several issues I do want to raise. Johnny?
Sure. Yeah, mine's a very short one, I think. There's a really good parish council supported Happy Hub, it's called, in the Chelsea pavilion. How can this, I imagine they would be part of the spoke that comes out. How do you engage with an example of a organisation like that, a provider like that?
So as part of taking forward Best Start Family Hubs in Oxfordshire, we have a series of network events across each of the 5 localities, and that's built on some of the existing structures that are in place within our locality community and support services. So for example, in this month in June, we had sessions attended by partners within each of those areas. And that is about engaging with our BCFSE partners in terms of the direction of travel for hubs and to help us move together in terms of implementation. So we will hold those on a regular basis, and we're committed to doing that on a bi-monthly basis, and or bringing specific groups together so that we can answer any questions and make sure that we're all working in partnership, because the success of this is about the multi-agency partnership. Hope that answers your questions in terms of how we're engaging with communities. We've also got a programme of play and learn activities going on around the county in each of the 5 localities, and we'll use that as an opportunity to get alongside families to learn from them in terms of what is needed in each area, and we'll use that in terms of engagement and trying to kind of co-produce in terms of the model going forward.
Thank you. I've got a couple of specific questions, I suppose, but before I ask them, I suppose for me, I've got a very clear view in my head how this could grow and develop and what the issues are around it. So nobody else is that, because obviously it's in my head. But I do think that some of the issues that have been raised, I mean, the issue, every child in this country has, when it's born, has a health visitor, right? To start with, there's a midwife, then there's a health visitor. And I think one of the things that the Sure Start centres did was actually engage the health visitors into a wider range of activity in terms of the children they were caring for and they were responsible for. And I think that's really important, because I think some of that maybe had drifted away a bit, particularly during COVID. So I think I think for us as local councillors, we need to make sure that we're engaged with all of the people in our communities that are actually giving services to children. The other thing is, I mean, there's the whole issue about the voluntary community sector. I mean, for me, for children at home or children where parents need that support, Home Start is just one of the most brilliant organisations. I think most of us I mean, certainly I've been involved with it since it was set up, and I think that organisation, being able to get that organisation, particularly into the families and rural communities where they may feel isolated, and where a volunteer coming in, maybe even from the local community, can actually support that family, is something that is crucial within the whole issue about child development. So those are some of the things, and the fact is for all of us is that actually the demography is changing. There's going to be a lot more room in some of our schools, and I think we need to be making sure that those spaces are used well, and are used well particularly for children that will be going into those schools from those communities. And certainly the Sure Start centres in some primary schools were actually heavily engaged in making sure there were services for the under fives, because clearly those children were going to come into their schools and they wanted to engage with them long before that. So I think there's an enormous amount of opportunities within this. The specific issues I wanted to ask were around, one, children we care for in relation to the family hubs. And did we have any specific programs that we're looking for in terms of engaging those children within the hubs? And I'm talking about all children, not just older children. The other issue, and Harriet, I think I'm just putting you, I don't know whether you're working with teenage mums in particular, but also teenage dads, to support them in their parenting, because obviously, for many of those children, they're children themselves, and they're then landed with massive parenting responsibilities, and they also need the most help we can give them. Harriet, do you want to come in on it?
Yeah, so for teenage parents, they would have a social work plan to support them with the development of their child. So I think, Sophie, probably better to answer that question about teenage parents and the support that they get already.
So yes, in terms of teenage parents, so yes, we are intended to work really closely with the Family Nurse Partnership, with those parents that they support, both mum and dad, to support them as early as we can in that journey to parenthood, in a non-stigmatizing way, so we can start building those parenting skills with them. So that's very much part of our core offer. And in terms of our wider offer, we are looking at differently blended families, kinship care, foster care, children we care for. How can we make sure that we've got adoptive families? How can we make sure that we've got services that are accessible to them, that can meet some of the specific needs that they may have as a family? So yeah, definitely on our wider offer. Yeah,
thank you, Jenny. Annette, did you want to come in again?
Yes, I just wanted to offer you some assurance, and there's always more that we can do. So I just want to accept that as well. But our co-chair of our early years board is Donna Husband. Unfortunately, she's on leave today. She commissions the public health visiting service. So those health visitors, the way the health visitors are working with the early years team, that's a key part of our development, making sure there's data exchange, making sure that parents are able to access an additional offer that we actually offer in Oxfordshire as well. So maybe moving them out from what you're absolutely right did happen in COVID into going back into clinics, back out into the community again. That's really fundamentally crucial. And we are already connected in with Home Start, and as Harriet just said, in terms of the Family Nurse Partnership and offering dads specific programs as well. And I say that not because I think that we've got all of that absolutely right at the moment, but it's certainly forming part of our offer, whether that be core or wider offer. And we are moving towards how we can expand, scale up, make the most of those relationships to pick up on all of the aspects that you've rightfully identified.
Thank you. So we can all look forward to exciting times for families with under fives and for families that use our hubs. So I'm really excited that we're again going to see that those children given a sure start in life. Anyhow, never mind a best start. They need the one of the things that I do feel quite strongly about is for many of our children, they're not able to keep themselves safe. And by that, I mean, right from the very beginning, Lisa was talking about language and not being able to articulate what's happening to them and how they fail. But it's right the whole way through, being able, because no matter what, children are better at keeping themselves safe than anyone else is. Parents will say, well, we're good at keeping children safe. But after the first conversation we had around the inspection, we know that sometimes that also isn't the case. We really need to give children the power over their own bodies, power to grow and develop and to thrive. And I think that's what Best Start Children's Centres is going to do. And I'm really glad that we're now on the beginning. We're now in the foothills of developing it again in Oxfordshire. But some of the stuff that was there before was left, and they're also growth points for us all. I was minded by Johnny's point about Cholsey. Those sorts of things are happening all over the county. So thank you ever so much. And I will now decide what we're going to say to Cabinet, Sean. Okay, and this will come back, the monitoring of all of the, particularly of our extended hopes for our children in terms of attaining. So that will come back to a future scrutiny committee as one of the main actions from this meeting. But also, can we go through some of the points that were made and what we want to say to Cabinet?
I
Richard?
didn't hear any recommendations in particular, Chair. I mean, you may want to sort of encourage the council to commit to getting on with the Best Start in Life plan and doing it well.
Yeah, but well, one of them for me would be, but maybe others don't, is actually to ensure that actually the amount of resources there to enable Sean to meet his ambition for our children in Oxfordshire. So one very simple recommendation to council. How about that, Sean?
Are there nods around the table from committee members?
Okay.
There's your recommendation.
Thank you. So thank you for that, and thank you for I mean, it is exciting, I think. But it's also exciting that we may be able to have really good growth around this area in terms of the changes in demography, in terms of a whole lot of other things in our own communities that we know about. And I urge you all to go and visit early childhood provision in your division, and so that you can see what's going on in for the children that you're responsible for as local members, locally elected members. Thank you. So now we move on to the SEND improvement notice. Hi, Deb. I'm hoping that we don't need to spend too much time on this, because actually it is good news, but we've moved on from it in a sense. The next issue is our SEND reform plan, and clearly that's going to come back, and I'll speak about that later. But I do think we do need to take note of the improvement notice letter. Sean.
Thank you, Liz. The Secretary of State for Education, Bridget Phillipson, wrote to Liz Leffman, who was the leader of the County Council at the time, to Lisa, our Director of Children's Services, and to Dr. Nick Broughton, who was the Executive Lead for the ICB, what was the Bob ICB, now the Thames Valley ICB. This was on the 15th of April, and it is good news. It was recognition that good progress has been made in Oxfordshire in how we deliver SEND, and it's complicated because we don't want to strike too jubilant a note and be slapping each other on the back, but because there are still parents and families and carers that aren't quite feeling it yet, and still some families writing to me even now to say that things aren't quite right. But at the same time, progress has been made, and you know, officers and everybody else in the SEND local area partnership have done a really good, thorough, solid job on getting us to where we are now. And you know, I pay huge credit to our SEND Improvement Assurance Board. Without that partnership coming together, I'm absolutely convinced we wouldn't be where we are now. So you know, credit to that board, to Steve Crocker, the independent chair, and everybody that sits around the table and has got us to this point. But we know that we're not there yet, and we know that there's still more improvements that we need to make, and there's still more, you know, parents and carers that we need to carry on working with. So that's where I'm up to. I'm very grateful and pleased with where we are, and I'm very recognisant of the fact that we've got more to go.
Thank you, Sean. Anyone want to make any points about this? As I say, I think this is, I mean, I think Steve Crocker has done an amazing job. But I also think some of the delivering better value work was really beneficial to Oxfordshire. And so, Deb, did you want to come in? Sorry.
Andy. Absolutely. I think that the journey that Oxfordshire has been on has been an incredibly sustained. We started with the delivering better value, and the diagnostics from that outlined that one of the big drivers and one of the big levers we needed to address was parental confidence and mainstream ability to meet need. Therefore, we started the good foundations about addressing that, working in partnership with our schools and our stakeholders to address that. We saw good traction on those developments, those programs, such as special school outreach, enhanced pathways, which have all sort of, post the inspection, actually gave us even further foundations to build a really good SEND transformation. And I think we're in a really positive place now as we move forward into the SEND reform programme.
Thank you, Deb. So if we can, sorry, did you want to come in? No. So there isn't anything we've got, unless anybody wants to raise any questions and what have you on this. I don't think we do. I think it's good news, but we're now moving into the SEND reform plan, and we need to make sure that we are able to move in a very positive way in order to deliver for some of our most vulnerable children. So can we leave that at that? Yes? Yes. Right, good. So if we can move on then to the committee forward plan. And can I just say that one of the things that we did discuss it whenever we talked about this when we went through the agenda was in terms of the SEND reform plan. I do think, I mean, the fact that it seemed to be shifting sands as you were going through trying to put it together, with changes coming down from central government and having to respond quickly. And so I do understand why we couldn't get to scrutiny before it had gone into the DFE, but I totally accept that some of the parameters put in place for you were actually really difficult to achieve. So I think now we probably would like to spend a decent amount of time looking at the SEND reform plan, and particularly, obviously, it has gone into the DFE, and we'll need to wait for the approval of that. But we were thinking of actually perhaps making our meeting in November an all-day meeting, so we would do whatever was on the forward plan for that day, but we would also do then a really good bit on the SEND reform plan and make recommendations to Cabinet if that was something we wanted to do. How do well, officers and I'll ask members first. Do you feel that would be a good use of time? Are you happy to give up a whole day for the November date? Yeah. Right. Thank you. So we'll put that in. And Lisa, is that in terms of the work required and what have you?
I think that's fine. Obviously, you didn't get really in-depth look at it beforehand, and it is probably worth having a bit of a digest and dissect as to what all of these things mean, particularly for counsellors who will be working with parents and families in their areas. who may have concerns. I just think I'll just take the opportunity to say that nothing changes at this point. It's still the same legislation until about 2029. So this is about developing a system alongside a system. So there's probably a bit more we could do to just take people through that.
And I think that's right. I mean, I think the issue for us is that we're caught in a national system that actually hasn't been functioning properly since, what is it, 2014, whenever the legislation went through. And it hasn't been functioning properly, and it's put in place horrendous issues in relation particularly to the financing of local government and to the high needs block. And I know we will be getting, and the Send Reform Plan was put in on the basis that that when it was accepted we would get 90% of the or 90% of the deficit removed. But actually, that's only 1 year. What happens to the rest of it? Are we really? I can remember going through the delivering better value stuff, and no one really had done much work around what they meant by better value. We all want to deliver better value, but what does it look like, and how do you do it? And so I think there are a whole range of issues around that, and certainly I think the challenges of the legislation and getting the right legislation in place is going to be enormous for whoever is actually doing that nationally. So I think there's a range of issues that by November I think we'll be a lot clearer on. Right? So that was the first. Was there anything else in the forward plan, Richard, that we needed to look at? Can you take us through it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll firm up with the director. September looks as September looks. And to note that on the Wood-Eaton group, Councillor Heritage has been appointed to replace Councillor Fletcher.
Okay, thank you for that, Georgina. And obviously that's something that we need to get right. And you will be meeting and yeah, as a group. Yeah. So we've got the September meeting all in place, and of course it's all these the different things that we've actually the Youth Justice annual plan. Is there any other annual plans that need to come to that September meeting?
We've got several for November.
Have we? Can some of those, the Safeguarding Partnership annual report, that'll not be ready until November? Is that right?
So we can juggle the timescales around. I just need to make sure with the summer break that it's circulated in the right order through the various committees. But I mean, we'll have it.
Yeah. For me, the issue is about it coming. When is it coming to council? Whenever, because these reports have to also go to council.
So therefore, they were planned. That Youth Justice was planned for September.
Right.
That should be at full council in around November, where at that time.
Right.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of, but there was an acceptance, I believe, that safeguarding annual reports would go to full council. So that would go at the same time.
Yeah, that's what, because when I looked at the full council, I thought that all of these reports were going at the same time. And that's why I was just a bit worried to make sure that we made sure that they were coming to scrutiny before they went to council.
I think.
Well, just test that.
Yeah. Check with the director.
Yeah. Okay.
Timelines.
And so then we've got the virtual school annual report coming in the 24th of November. We've got the Thames Valley, the Adopt Thames Valley annual report, and we've got the Children's Safeguarding annual report in November, and the SEN report, which will take up most of that agenda. Yeah. We also were talking about 6-month review of in terms of looking at what was happening around the inspection report and addressing that. So that would be, perhaps that would be January. Yeah. Is there anything else anyone wants to put on this list of future items on the agenda? James, Toya, Johnny, Georgina, Stefan, Izzy, Ron. Oh, you were going. We're nice. We're nice. You won't be here, hopefully. Lila. Ulsa? No. Okay. If you want, if you think of something, send an email to me or to Richard, okay? You know, because obviously this has been your first meeting and I hope it hasn't been too traumatic. You'll come again. Right, okay. And the other things we were looking at, who?
Deb.
Oh, Deb.
I just had a very quick thing I'd like to raise, if that's possible. There's time. I'd just like to raise something very quickly, if it's possible.
Oh, yes, go on.
You'll be aware that as part of our priority action plan, we needed to revise and update our SEND strategy. And I just thought it was an amiss not to mention that that consultation is now live. You can find the consultation on Let's Talk. Please take a look, and we really value all comments.
Right.
Sorry.
Have you got
Yeah.
the web address as well?
I can send that across to you, Richard.
So we've got the SEND strategy out for consultation now, but
Yes.
we won't know if we've got the SEND reform plan, which is part of the strategy. Agreed by central government until whenever.
The SEND strategy was drafted prior to, obviously we knew about the SEND reforms.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we're obviously needing to bring two moving parts together. But actually, when you look at the 8 commitments that we'd already drafted, they're very much in line with the direction of travel that we are required to take as part of the SEND reform plan. So we've made the decision based on prior consultation to carry on with those 8 commitments. What the strategy does is outline our intent, our ambition, and what good will look like. The SEND reform plan will be the implementation to how we achieve that ambition.
Right, okay. And so you've taken into account the stuff that was in the white paper and the
yes,
what do you call it? The education white paper.
Yes.
And also the consultation that went out and SEND.
Yes.
And are you making any?
Well, the white paper is obviously not so far down the line, but the SEND reform very much so. This is a SEND strategy, so this is very much yeah. So we have,
and of course there are issues in it that we might in the SEND consultation, the stuff that will ultimately go to Parliament, that we might want to have a say in.
Yeah.
Right. When will
if I circulate the consultation link to all members of the committee, and then if you want to bring anything in, then do.
Okay, maybe we could actually have the result of it whenever we do the SEND reform plan. We could have the result of the consultation.
Yeah, so the consultation is out for 45 days. Over the summer, we'll be reviewing that and seeing whether there need to be any edits. So if you are wanting to, I guess it's around councillors taking the opportunity to complete the consultation. But yes, we can bring back the completed consultation strategy in November.
I think that would be really good to bring it back with the plan so the whole thing actually comes together.
And I think that is absolutely something that we need to make sure happens, that it's really clear how the strategy and the SEND reform plan knit together, which they do.
Good. Just as long as national policy actually fits neatly over it or under it as it should. But yeah. Okay. So we've got. Sorry, Annette.
I was just going to confirm what Deb has just said. We don't have the date yet in terms of government's response to their national SEND consultation. We don't have a date for that, but we can bring ours, and potentially in November we will also be able to bring you an update on the SEND reform plan in terms of the first monitoring, because we are subject to quarterly monitoring by the DfE. So that feels like everything coming together feels quite
comfortable. Right. Thank you. Okay, there is, now what else have we got on here? So that's the forward plan, the action and recommendation tracker to note. Can I just say that there was something on one of these that I wasn't happy with?
So yours is on the next item, Chair.
Oh, am I?
On the responses to recommendations.
Yeah, that's it.
So I think the committee's noted the action recommendation tracker.
Right, okay, right. So we've, there was if you remember, we had this yeah, I've got it here. If you remember, we made a recommendation to Cabinet around, very much supported by Sean, so that about members, council members knowing when Cabinet members are, I mean, I think the officers bit's quite different, but particularly when Cabinet members were visiting our local schools, so that we could be there, and it would be useful for local members to have that opportunity. I know Sean has actually said he's quite happy to do that, but in the recommendation it's saying that it's not would not be practical to advise local members for every visit. Now, I'm not quite sure how that works. Sean?
Yeah, so there was just the distinction between officers visiting schools and being able to carry out the important work that they do, and me visiting schools, and the distinction being that if I'm going to visit a school, the member will be contacted and has been contacted on every school visit, but that won't necessarily translate to the work that the officers are doing, which is very different to the work that I'm doing. But I will make sure that members are aware.
Okay. So we've got Georgina.
Could I do I need to use a microphone at the moment? Or
yes,
yes, I wasn't sure.
Live stream is still.
Thank you. I just want to thank you, Sean. I know that you visited a school in my division recently, and it's one that I've been doing some work with in recent weeks, and so yeah, you know, the project that's being undertaken there. I thank you very much for notifying me, and I do very much appreciate that. Would it be possible to have a little bit more notice? Because it wasn't possible at that stage for me to rearrange plans, and I would have liked to have been in attendance if I could.
It's very fair. So you'll recall that that school visit was triggered by Freddie and him writing to me and inviting me to his visit, which I couldn't make. So then I arranged another visit, and I told him that I would arrange another visit. So there was early notification without being pinned down. And then when it was pinned down, it's very short notice. So I take that on board. That's my fault.
Thanks, Sean. Anyhow, anything else on anything on the agenda, or can we close the meeting? No. Anyhow, thank you all very much. Goodness, we only overran by 6 minutes.
And 27 seconds.
Oh, they're very important. Okay, thanks everyone very much. Go off and try and enjoy the sunshine.